Lucas's bare feet padded along the hot pavement as he walked down the cracked and dusty road that led home from school. His worn-out backpack hung loosely from one shoulder, the faded straps threatening to give way with each step. His clothes were threadbare, a hand-me-down shirt that was too big and pants that had been patched several times. But he wore a small smile, content with the simple joy of another day completed. He was just about to turn onto his street when he noticed a luxury black SUV parked awkwardly on the roadside. It was the kind of car that didn't belong in his neighborhood, a place where most families struggled to keep food on the table, let alone afford a shiny new vehicle. The hood was propped open, and a well-dressed man stood beside it, looking completely out of place and flustered. He wore a crisp white shirt, a tailored suit, and an expensive watch that glinted in the sunlight. The man seemed at a loss, staring under the hood and then back at his car as if the vehicle might magically repair itself. Lucas paused for a moment, unsure. He could just walk past. This wasn't his problem, and helping strangers, especially ones who looked wealthy, rarely led to anything good in his experience. Yet there was something in the man's expression, a hint of helplessness, that reminded Lucas of his own mother when their old washing machine had finally broken down. That memory stirred something in him, and despite his initial reluctance, he walked over. "Need some help?" Lucas asked, his voice shy and soft. The man looked up, clearly surprised to see a boy with torn clothes and bare feet offering assistance. He blinked, as if taking in Lucas's appearance for the first time, before his face softened. Yes, actually," he replied, sounding relieved. "The engine just died, and I have no idea what's wrong. I tried calling for a tow truck, but it's going to take them over an hour to get here." Lucas glanced at the engine, though he knew nothing about cars. "I'm not really good with fixing engines, but I can help push it to the side of the road if you want." The man hesitated, looking uncertain, before he nodded with a grateful smile. "That would be great. I really appreciate it." They moved to the back of the SUV. Lucas pressed his hands against the cool metal and braced his bare feet against the rough ground. He could feel the grit and gravel digging into his soles, but he ignored the discomfort. With a mutual count of 3, they pushed with all their might. The car inched forward slowly, and Lucas gritted his teeth, focusing all his strength on the task. The man's face grew red from exertion, and he was panting by the time they managed to get the SUV safely onto the shoulder. Lucas, too, was out of breath, but he stood straight, wiping sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. It had been hard work, but he felt a quiet satisfaction from helping someone in need. The man took a moment to catch his breath before turning to Lucas with a look of genuine admiration. "You're stronger than you look," he said with a chuckle, pulling a crisp white handkerchief from his pocket to wipe his forehead. Lucas shrugged. "Just used to working hard, I guess." The man extended his hand. "Arthur Hayes," he introduced himself. Lucas looked at the outstretched hand for a moment, feeling a bit awkward, before he shook it. "Lucas," he replied simply. Arthur's eyes softened as he regarded Lucas. "Thank you, Lucas." Not many people would stop to help, especially a stranger. Lucas felt himself blush a little, uncomfortable with the praise. "It's no big deal. I just thought, well, you looked like you needed help." Arthur gave a small nod, his eyes thoughtful. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few folded bills. "Let me give you something for your trouble. It's the least I can do." Lucas shook his head, taking a step back. "No, thank you," he mumbled. "I didn't do it for money. I just wanted to help." Arthur paused, clearly surprised by Lucas's refusal. He looked at the money in his hand, then back at Lucas, who was already starting to turn away. "You're a rare young man, Lucas," Arthur said softly. "Not many people would turn down money, especially when it's offered freely." Lucas gave a shy smile, feeling a swell of pride at the man's words. "Take care, Mr. Hayes," he said before turning and walking away. As Lucas made his way home, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. The encounter replayed in his mind, and although he knew he'd likely never see Arthur Hayes again, he felt a warmth in his chest. He hadn't done it for a reward. He had just done what he thought was right. It was how his mother had raised him. He arrived home to find his mother in the kitchen, preparing a simple meal. His younger brother, Davy, sat on the floor, playing with a makeshift toy. Their home was small and humble, but Lucas felt a sense of comfort and belonging here. He told his mom about his day, leaving out the part about helping the man with the car. It didn't seem important enough to mention, just another small moment in a day like any other. That night, as he lay on his thin mattress, staring up at the cracked ceiling, he wondered what kind of life Arthur Hayes lived. Lucas had seen glimpses of that world in magazines and on TV, a world of wealth and privilege far removed from his own reality. For a moment, he imagined himself in that world, not struggling to make ends meet, not worrying about where the next meal would come from. But he quickly dismissed the thought. It was a fantasy, something that could never be his reality. With a sigh, Lucas rolled over, pulling his thin blanket up to his shoulders, and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would be just like any other day. School, collecting recyclables, and helping his mom. But that was okay. He was used to it. The next morning, Lucas was helping his mother with some chores around the house. He swept the dusty floor while Davy played with his toy truck nearby. It was a quiet, ordinary morning until the low, rumbling sound of an engine reached his ears. It was louder than any of the usual cars that drove through their neighborhood. Curious, Lucas put down the broom and went to the front window. His eyes widened in surprise as he saw a sleek black SUV, the same one from yesterday, parked right outside their house. A moment later, Arthur Hayes stepped out, looking slightly out of place in his expensive suit amidst the modest surroundings. Lucas's mother noticed the vehicle too, and she looked at Lucas with a mixture of confusion and concern. "Lucas, do you know this man?" Lucas nodded, still staring out the window. "He's the guy I helped yesterday. His car broke down, and I helped him push it off the road." His mother's expression softened, but there was still a hint of worry in her eyes. "Why would he come here, Lucas?" Lucas shook his head. "I don't know, Mom. I didn't do anything wrong." Arthur walked up to their front door, his movements measured and respectful. He knocked 3 times, the sound echoing in their small house. Lucas hesitated, his heart racing, before finally opening the door. Arthur greeted him with a warm smile. "Hello, Lucas. I hope I'm not intruding." Lucas's mother appeared behind him, her expression cautious but polite. Arthur offered her a respectful nod. "Ma'am, I just wanted to stop by and properly thank Lucas for his kindness yesterday." She gave a small, hesitant smile, glancing between Lucas and Arthur. "It was kind of you to come by, Mr. Hayes." Arthur looked back at Lucas, his gaze softening. "Lucas, yesterday you showed me a rare kindness, expecting nothing in return. It's something I don't see often, especially in my world." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "I wanted to offer you this as a token of my appreciation." Lucas felt his face heat up with embarrassment. He knew Arthur meant well, but he still shook his head. "Thank you, sir, but I don't need any money. I'm just glad I could help." Arthur studied him for a moment, then put the envelope away with a nod of respect. "I understand, and I admire your integrity, Lucas." He looked thoughtful for a moment before adding, "Actually, I have another idea, one that might benefit you and your family in a bigger way." Lucas and his mother exchanged a puzzled glance as Arthur continued, "If it's okay with you, I'd like to come inside and explain." Arthur Hayes stood in their small, modest living room, seeming out of place yet surprisingly at ease. His expensive suit, neatly combed hair, and polished shoes contrasted sharply with the worn furniture and simple decor. Lucas's mother, Maria, watched him with a wary but polite smile, her hands nervously gripping a dish towel as she offered him a seat. "Thank you for letting me in," Arthur said, his tone warm and sincere. He sat on their frayed sofa, adjusting to its uneven cushions, and looked around the room thoughtfully. Lucas could see the faint traces of surprise in Arthur's eyes as he took in their surroundings. It was clear this wasn't the kind of home Arthur was used to visiting. Lucas shifted uncomfortably beside his mother, wondering what Arthur could possibly want. Yesterday's events felt like a distant memory already, a small act of kindness that Lucas hadn't thought much about since. But Arthur's presence here, in their living room, made it feel like something far more significant. Arthur leaned forward slightly, his gaze focused and intent. "Lucas," he began, "I don't think you fully understand just how rare it is to meet someone like you. Yesterday, you helped me when I needed it, with no expectations of anything in return. In a world where everyone seems to have an agenda, that sort of kindness is remarkable." Maria glanced at Lucas, pride evident in her eyes despite her lingering unease. Lucas shifted uncomfortably under Arthur's praise, unsure how to respond. He hadn't done anything special. At least it didn't feel that way to him. He had simply seen someone who needed help and acted. That was just what his mother had always taught him. Arthur continued, "I've been very fortunate in life. Lucas, I've worked hard, yes, but I've also had my share of lucky breaks and opportunities that others may not have had. And I believe that when we're given blessings, it's our responsibility to pay it forward." Maria's eyes softened at his words, her suspicion gradually giving way to a glimmer of hope. She leaned forward slightly, finally speaking up. "Mr. Hayes, we're grateful for your kind words. But I'm not sure why you're here." Lucas didn't do it for recognition or reward. Arthur nodded, a gentle smile crossing his face. "I understand, Maria. And that's precisely why I'm here. I want to offer Lucas an opportunity, a chance for something bigger than what he's had so far." Lucas's brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean, sir?" Arthur took a breath, gathering his thoughts. "There's a school in the city, a private school with excellent teachers, resources, and opportunities. It's a place that could open doors for you, Lucas. They offer scholarships for students with promise, but usually you have to be nominated by someone connected to the school. I'd want to sponsor you, Lucas. I want to help you get into that school." The room fell silent. Maria's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Lucas felt as though he were in a dream, his mind struggling to grasp the enormity of Arthur's offer. The idea of attending a prestigious school, a place where students wore uniforms and had access to books, computers, and teachers who genuinely cared, it was something Lucas had never even allowed himself to imagine. "But why?" Lucas stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "I mean, you don't even know me." Arthur's expression softened. "Maybe I don't know you well, Lucas, but I saw something in you yesterday. It wasn't just kindness. It was strength, humility, and integrity. You remind me a bit of myself when I was younger, before I had the advantages I have now. I want to give you the kind of break that someone once gave me." Maria looked between Arthur and Lucas, her eyes filling with tears. "Mr. Hayes, we don't know what to say. This is such a huge offer. But I don't think we could ever afford a school like that, even with a scholarship." Arthur held up a reassuring hand. "Please, call me Arthur. And as for the expenses, the scholarship would cover everything. Tuition, books, supplies, even uniforms. I'll make sure of it. All you and Lucas would need to do is say yes." Lucas felt his heart pounding in his chest. Part of him was thrilled at the prospect, but another part felt terrified. He knew that attending a private school would mean leaving behind his friends, his familiar surroundings, and the life he knew. It would be a whole new world, one where he might not fit in. He glanced at his mother, her expression a mix of pride and worry. She reached out, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Lucas, this is a chance for you, a chance to build a better future. But it's your choice. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Lucas swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He looked back at Arthur, his mind racing with questions and doubts. But beneath all of that, a small spark of excitement was beginning to grow. a feeling that perhaps, just maybe, he could be something more than he had ever dreamed. Arthur, Lucas said, his voice trembling slightly. I want to take this chance. I don't know what's waiting for me there, but I want to try. Arthur's face lit up with a proud smile. I'm glad to hear it, Lucas. You're making a brave choice, and I have no doubt you'll make the most of it. Maria wiped away a tear, pulling Lucas into a tight embrace. She whispered in his ear, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so proud of you, Lucas. You've always been a good boy. And now you're going to have a chance to show the world who you really are. As the family took in the news, Arthur reached into his pocket and handed Lucas a small business card with his contact information. The school term starts in a few weeks, so there's some paperwork to fill out and a few preparations to make. I'll help you with all of that. And Lucas, he added, looking him directly in the eye, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call me. This isn't just a one-time offer. I want to be there for you, every step of the way. Lucas nodded, overwhelmed but grateful. Thank you, Arthur. I won't let you down. Arthur stood up to leave, giving Lucas's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. I know you won't, Lucas. I believe in you. As he left, the neighbors who had gathered outside their house watched curiously, whispering amongst themselves about the mysterious man in the fancy car and what he could possibly want with the family who had so little. Lucas and his mother stood by the door, watching Arthur's SUV disappear down the road. When they finally stepped back inside, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Lucas was going to attend a private school, a place filled with students from families far wealthier and more privileged than his own. He felt a mix of excitement and fear, wondering if he would be able to keep up, if he would be able to make friends, or if he would just be an outsider. Later that evening, as Lucas lay in bed, he thought about the future awaiting him. He pictured classrooms with clean, polished desks, rows of bookshelves filled with books he had never read, and teachers who would challenge him to learn and grow. He imagined himself in a school uniform, walking through hallways that smelled of fresh paint and polished floors. But along with those dreams came a nagging fear. What if he didn't fit in? What if the other students looked down on him for being poor, for coming from a neighborhood like his? What if he failed? He took a deep breath, reminding himself of his mother's words, that she would be proud of him no matter what. And Arthur's words echoed in his mind as well. You're making a brave choice. Those words gave him a sense of courage, a feeling that maybe he could overcome whatever challenges lay ahead. As he drifted off to sleep, Lucas felt a flicker of hope for the future, a future that, just a day ago, he couldn't have imagined. For the first time in his life, he dared to dream of a different path, one that might lead him to places he had never thought possible. And as the morning sun began to peek through his window, Lucas was ready to face whatever lay ahead, determined to make the most of the incredible opportunity he had been given. The morning sunlight crept into Lucas's small bedroom, illuminating the faded posters on his wall and casting a warm glow over the worn-out furniture. But this morning, the light felt different. Lucas lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, letting the realization settle in. He was going to a new school, a place worlds away from the life he knew. The thought sent a thrill through him, mingled with an undercurrent of anxiety. After a quiet breakfast with his mom and little brother, Lucas helped her clear the table. She looked at him with a mixture of pride and worry in her eyes, her hands resting gently on his shoulders. Are you sure about this, Lucas? It's a big step. Lucas nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. I know, Mom. I'm nervous, but I want to do it. I want to make something of myself. She smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. You've always been a good boy, Lucas. Just remember who you are. This opportunity doesn't change the person you are inside. He hugged her, feeling her warmth and strength flow into him. Her support meant everything, and he wanted nothing more than to make her proud. His family had sacrificed so much, and he hoped this new path would be a way to give back. The days that followed were filled with preparations. Arthur Hayes kept his word, guiding them through the process, helping with the paperwork, and making sure Lucas felt ready for the transition. They went to the school to meet the principal, a woman named Ms. Roberts, who looked at Lucas with a mixture of curiosity and encouragement. "We're thrilled to have you joining us, Lucas," she said with a warm smile as they sat in her spacious office. "Your scholarship covers everything, and we'll make sure you have the support you need. It might feel overwhelming at first, but remember, you're here because you earned it." Lucas nodded, feeling a sense of validation in her words. Ms. Roberts handed him a uniform, a crisp white shirt, navy blazer, and matching pants. It felt surreal holding the fabric, the weight of it reminding him of the journey ahead. As they left the school that day, Lucas felt a surge of determination. He was going to work harder than ever, not just for himself, but for his family, who had always believed in him. The excitement mingled with fear, but Arthur's steady presence beside him gave him strength. On his first day at the new school, Lucas woke up early. He stood in front of the mirror in his small room, smoothing down his uniform, feeling both proud and self-conscious. The clothes felt strange against his skin, unfamiliar and formal. He tugged at the blazer, hoping it would settle into comfort with time. "Looking sharp," his mother said as she walked into his room, a proud smile spreading across her face. "You're going to do great, Lucas." Lucas grinned back, trying to hide his nervousness. "Thanks, Mom. I hope so." She gave him a quick hug, then handed him his old backpack, which now held fresh notebooks and new pencils Arthur had provided. "Remember, if things get tough, just take a deep breath and stay true to yourself. You don't have to change who you are for anyone." He nodded, taking her words to heart as he left the house. The bus ride to school felt surreal, the familiar streets blurring past as he tried to mentally prepare for what lay ahead. He'd always been one of the kids who walked to the neighborhood school, his worn shoes scuffing against the pavement. Now he was headed to a place where everyone had privileges he could only dream of. When he stepped off the bus and saw the school building looming ahead, his stomach twisted with nerves. The students around him wore the same uniform, but they seemed so much more at ease, their faces bright with confidence as they laughed and chatted with friends. Lucas felt like an outsider, unsure where he fit into this polished world. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of why he was here. He wasn't just a kid from the neighborhood. He was someone with potential, someone Arthur believed in. And that belief gave him strength. His first class was math, a subject he usually enjoyed. As he entered the classroom, he felt dozens of eyes turned toward him. He made his way to an empty seat near the back, trying to ignore the curious whispers that followed him. "Hey, you're new here, right?" a boy beside him asked, leaning over with a grin. "Yeah," Lucas replied, giving a small nod. The boy introduced himself as Mark, and for a moment, Lucas felt a glimmer of relief. Maybe he wouldn't be entirely alone here. Mark seemed friendly, and as they chatted briefly before the teacher arrived, Lucas began to relax. But as the day went on, Lucas realized not everyone was as welcoming as Mark. During lunch, he sat alone at a table near the corner of the cafeteria, trying to blend in. He noticed groups of students laughing, sharing food, and talking animatedly, but no one seemed to notice him. He took a bite of his sandwich, feeling the isolation creep in. Back at his old school, he had friends who understood him, who shared his struggles and laughed with him over the simplest things. Here, he felt invisible. As he finished his lunch, he overheard a group of students at the next table whispering. "Did you hear about the new scholarship kid?" one of them said, glancing in his direction. "I heard he's from the poor side of town." Lucas's face burned with embarrassment. He looked down at his lunch, trying to block out their words. But the hurt cut deep, and for a moment, he wondered if he'd made a mistake coming here. That evening, Arthur called to check in on him. Lucas hesitated before picking up the phone, unsure if he wanted to share his struggles. But as he heard Arthur's warm voice, he felt a sense of comfort. "So, how was your first day?" Arthur asked, his tone encouraging. "It was different," Lucas replied, choosing his words carefully. "Everyone's nice, but it's hard fitting in." Arthur paused, understanding in his voice. "I know it's not easy, Lucas. People might say things, and it can hurt. But remember, you're there for a reason. You belong just as much as anyone else." Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Arthur's words. "Thanks, Arthur. I'll try to remember that." "Good. And if you ever need anything, just call. I'm here for you, Lucas. You're not alone in this." The days that followed were challenging. Each morning, Lucas put on his uniform and steeled himself for the day ahead. He focused on his studies, determined to prove he was worthy of the opportunity Arthur had given him. Despite the whispers and occasional sneers, he kept his head down and worked hard. One day, after a particularly rough morning of classes, he found himself in the library, surrounded by shelves of books he'd never dreamed of having access to. He picked up a book on history, his fingers brushing over the glossy cover, feeling a spark of excitement. Back home, books were a luxury. Here, they were abundant, and he realized he could lose himself in their pages, escape the pressures of fitting in. As he turned to leave, he accidentally bumped into a girl holding a stack of books. They tumbled to the floor, and Lucas immediately knelt down to help her. "I'm so sorry," he stammered, feeling embarrassed. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's okay. I'm Emily." Lucas introduced himself, feeling a bit more at ease. Emily seemed different from the other students. She didn't look at him with judgment, just a friendly curiosity. "You're the new student, right? The one on the scholarship?" she asked, her tone genuine rather than mocking. Lucas hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, that's me." "Well, welcome. It's not easy being the new kid here," she said with a sympathetic smile. "I was new last year, so I know how it feels." They talked for a few more minutes, and Lucas found himself smiling for the first time in days. As they said goodbye, he felt a surge of hope. Maybe he could find his place here, one small step at a time. That night, he told his mom about meeting Emily, his voice filled with a cautious optimism. She smiled, her eyes bright with pride. "See, Lucas, you're finding your way. Just keep being yourself, and the right people will see who you really are." Lucas went to bed feeling lighter, his heart filled with a renewed determination. He knew he had a long journey ahead, but he was ready to face it. With Arthur's support, his mother's unwavering belief in him, and the kindness of new friends, he began to see that he could carve out a place for himself in this new world. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Lucas's morning started with a familiar routine, but now with a newfound sense of purpose and optimism. Despite the difficulties he'd faced fitting in at his new school, meeting Emily had been a spark of hope, a sign that maybe he didn't have to face everything alone. As he stood in front of the mirror adjusting his uniform, he recalled her friendly smile and the conversation they'd shared in the library. The thought of it brought a small warm smile to his face. When he walked into the kitchen, his mom was already there, preparing breakfast. She looked up from the stove and noticed the lightness in his step. "Good morning, Lucas," she said with a knowing smile. "You seem different today. Everything okay?" Lucas hesitated, not wanting to get his hopes too high, but he couldn't hide the faint glow in his eyes. "Yeah, Mom. I think things are getting a little better," he replied, accepting a plate of eggs and toast from her. His mom's face softened, and she gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder. "I'm glad, honey. Just remember to be patient with yourself. Change takes time, but I know you're going to find your way." Her words gave him strength, and he felt ready to take on whatever challenges the day held. After finishing breakfast, he grabbed his bag and headed out the door, mentally preparing himself for another day of classes, interactions, and the occasional unkind glance. But today, he felt more resilient, his heart steady with a quiet determination. When he arrived at school, Lucas was surprised to find Emily waiting for him by the entrance. She waved and walked over, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Good morning, Lucas. I thought we could walk to class together." Lucas smiled, feeling a rush of gratitude. "Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Emily." They strolled through the bustling hallways side by side, talking about their favorite books and sharing bits of their lives. Emily told him about her family, how they'd moved to the city last year for her father's job, and how she'd struggled to fit in as the new kid herself. Hearing her story made Lucas feel less alone. She understood what it was like to feel out of place in a world that didn't quite make sense. As they reached their classroom, a few of Lucas's classmates glanced at them, whispering and casting curious glances in his direction. He tensed, feeling the familiar pang of discomfort, but Emily noticed and gave him a reassuring nod. "Don't mind them," she whispered. "They're just curious. You're something different, Lucas, and different can be intimidating." Her words helped him stay calm, and for the first time, he felt himself beginning to care less about what others thought. With Emily's support, he was learning to focus on what really mattered: his studies, his dreams, and the people who genuinely cared about him. The school day went smoothly, and Lucas felt his confidence growing with each passing class. He answered questions in math, worked diligently in science, and even raised his hand in English to share his thoughts on a poem they were studying. He noticed that some students began to look at him with a newfound respect, as if they were starting to see beyond his scholarship status. At lunch, Lucas and Emily sat together in the cafeteria, sharing stories and laughing over their favorite movies. But halfway through their meal, a tall boy with a smug grin approached their table. Lucas recognized him. His name was Jordan, one of the more popular kids in school. Jordan had a way of making people feel small with just a look, and he rarely passed up an opportunity to remind others of his social status. Well, look who's got a new friend," Jordan sneered, crossing his arms as he glanced between Lucas and Emily. "Guess they'll let just anyone sit with you these days, huh, Emily?" Lucas's stomach tightened, but he forced himself to stay calm, keeping his gaze steady as he met Jordan's eyes. Emily, however, was not as composed. She narrowed her eyes and shot Jordan a glare. "Grow up, Jordan," she said coolly. "Lucas is my friend, and he belongs here just as much as anyone else." Jordan scoffed, his gaze lingering on Lucas with a sneer. "Oh, is that right? Look, Emily, just because he's got a scholarship doesn't mean he fits in here. He doesn't belong with us, and you know it." Lucas felt a flash of anger, but he took a deep breath, refusing to let Jordan get under his skin. He'd faced worse than this. He wasn't going to let a few hurtful words break his spirit. He was here to learn, to work hard, and to make a better life for himself and his family. Emily's face flushed with anger, and she opened her mouth to retaliate, but Lucas gently placed a hand on her arm, signaling her to let it go. He looked at Jordan and said calmly, "Maybe I don't fit into your world, Jordan, but I'm here to do my best, and I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to like it, but you can't stop me." The words surprised even Lucas himself. It was the first time he'd stood up for himself so openly, and it felt liberating. He saw a flicker of uncertainty in Jordan's eyes before the other boy smirked, rolling his eyes as he walked away. Emily looked at Lucas, admiration shining in her gaze. "That was amazing, Lucas. You didn't let him intimidate you." Lucas shrugged, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over him. "I'm tired of letting people make me feel small, Emily. I deserve to be here, just like you said." The rest of the day passed without incident, and by the time Lucas got home, he felt a newfound sense of pride. He was no longer just the scholarship kid. He was Lucas, a boy with dreams, resilience, and a strong sense of self-worth. He had faced down one of his biggest fears and come out stronger for it. That evening, Arthur called to check in on him, and Lucas eagerly shared the events of his day, feeling a surge of gratitude for the man who had given him this opportunity. "Arthur, today, Today, I stood up for myself, Lucas said, his voice filled with pride. It wasn't easy, but I did it, and it felt good. Arthur's voice was warm and encouraging. I knew you had it in you, Lucas. You're stronger than you realize. This journey won't be easy, but every step you take is a victory. Lucas smiled, feeling the warmth of Arthur's support. Thank you, Arthur. I couldn't have done this without you. Over the next few weeks, Lucas found his footing at school. With Emily by his side and Arthur's unwavering belief in him, he began to excel in his studies, gaining the respect of his teachers and even some of his classmates. The whispers and glances gradually faded as people started to see him for who he truly was, a hard-working, kind-hearted boy with a fierce determination to succeed. But despite his progress, Lucas never forgot where he came from. He continued to help his mom around the house, gathering recyclables on weekends and spending time with his little brother, Davy. He wanted to show his family that this new life didn't change who he was inside. It only gave him the chance to dream bigger and work harder. One Friday afternoon, as Lucas walked home, he saw Arthur's black SUV parked outside his house. His heart skipped a beat as he jogged up the steps, curious about the unexpected visit. Arthur stepped out of the car, a warm smile on his face. Lucas, I thought I'd stop by and see how you're settling in. Lucas beamed, grateful for the familiar face. It's going really well, Arthur. I'm learning a lot, and well, I'm starting to feel like I belong. Arthur's eyes gleamed with pride. I knew you would. You've got a remarkable spirit, Lucas. I can't wait to see all the things you accomplish. They sat on the porch steps, talking about school, life, and the challenges Lucas had overcome. Arthur listened intently, offering advice and encouragement with every story. For the first time, Lucas felt like he was sharing his life with someone who truly understood, someone who believed in him wholeheartedly. Before leaving, Arthur placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder, his gaze serious yet kind. Remember, Lucas, you're not alone. If you ever need anything, support, guidance, even just someone to talk to, I'm here. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. Lucas nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Arthur. I won't forget that. As Arthur drove away, Lucas felt a profound sense of hope. He wasn't just a boy with a scholarship. He was a young man with a future, a purpose, and a network of people who believed in him. He knew there would be more obstacles, more challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them with courage and resilience. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, with the sunlight streaming through Lucas's bedroom window, casting a golden glow across his room. He blinked his eyes open, momentarily disoriented, before he remembered it was the weekend, a day he didn't have to rush off to school or worry about the stares and whispers of his classmates. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to relax. He got dressed quickly, putting on his favorite shirt, one he'd kept for years despite it being a little too snug now. It reminded him of simpler times, and wearing it felt comforting. After tying his shoelaces, he went into the kitchen, where his mom was already bustling around, preparing breakfast. She looked up with a smile as he entered, placing a steaming plate of pancakes in front of him. "Good morning, honey," she greeted, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "I thought I'd make something special today. You've been working so hard lately." Lucas's eyes lit up at the sight of the pancakes, the golden edges crisp and inviting. "Thanks, Mom. They look amazing." As he dug into the food, savoring every bite, his mom joined him at the table, a cup of coffee in her hands. She watched him eat, her expression softening with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Lucas. I know it hasn't been easy, adjusting to this new life, but you've been so brave." Lucas swallowed a bite of pancake and glanced up at her, his face tinged with humility. "Thanks, Mom. It's been hard, but it's getting better. I'm starting to feel like I actually belong there." Emily's been a huge help too. His mom nodded knowingly, a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. "Emily, huh? She seems like a sweet girl." Lucas felt his cheeks warm, and he looked down at his plate, trying to hide his embarrassment. "She's just a friend, Mom," he mumbled, though he couldn't deny the warmth he felt when he thought of her. His mom chuckled softly. "Well, friend or not, it sounds like she's been a good influence on you. And I'm glad you found someone to share this journey with." Before Lucas could respond, a loud rumble outside caught their attention. It sounded like a powerful engine, and they both turned toward the window, curious. When Lucas peered out, his heart skipped a beat. A sleek black SUV was parked right in front of their house, the same one Arthur had arrived in before. "Arthur's here," Lucas said excitedly, jumping up from the table. He glanced back at his mom, who gave him a reassuring nod. "Go on, honey," she said, her face breaking into a smile. "I'll clean up here." Lucas bolted out the door, feeling the surge of excitement. Arthur stepped out of the SUV, dressed in his usual tailored suit, his expression warm as he caught sight of Lucas. The older man waved and walked over, giving Lucas a firm handshake. "Good morning, Lucas. I hope I'm not interrupting your Saturday." "Not at all," Lucas replied eagerly. "It's great to see you, Arthur. What brings you here?" Arthur's eyes gleamed with a hint of mystery. "I thought you might like a bit of a break from the usual routine. How would you feel about spending the day with me? There's something I want to show you." Lucas's curiosity piqued, and he glanced back at his house, wondering if his mom would be okay with it. But as if reading his mind, Arthur added, "I spoke with your mom already, and she's fine with it. She thinks it'll be good for you." A thrill of excitement ran through Lucas. He couldn't remember the last time he'd gone somewhere new, especially with someone like Arthur. "I'd love to go," he said, grinning. Arthur led him to the SUV, and Lucas climbed into the passenger seat, marveling at the leather interior and the smooth hum of the engine as they pulled away from the curb. The cityscape rolled by as they drove, but soon Arthur took a turn that led them out of the bustling streets and into a quieter, more scenic part of town. As they drove along a winding road, the scenery shifted from city buildings to lush, open fields dotted with trees. The air felt fresher here, and Lucas couldn't help but press his face against the window, taking in the beautiful landscape. After about 20 minutes, they arrived at a large, modern building with expansive glass windows and a sleek design. Arthur parked the SUV and turned to Lucas, his expression thoughtful. "Lucas, I wanted to show you this place because it represents something very special to me. This is the community center I helped establish a few years ago. It's a place where kids from all backgrounds can come to learn, grow, and find their paths in life." Lucas looked at Arthur with wide eyes, a sense of awe settling over him. You built this." Arthur nodded. "With the help of some good people who believed in the cause. I know what it's like to come from humble beginnings. Lucas, I wasn't always the man you see now. There was a time when I was struggling, just like you. But someone helped me, gave me a chance to make something of myself. And now, I try to do the same for others." They stepped out of the SUV, and Arthur led Lucas through the doors of the center. Inside, the space was filled with kids and teenagers working on various projects. Some were painting, others were working on computers, and a group in the corner was practicing a dance routine. The atmosphere buzzed with energy and creativity, and Lucas felt an immediate connection to it. "Come on, let me give you a tour," Arthur said, gesturing for Lucas to follow him. They walked through the spacious halls, past classrooms, art studios, and even a small gym. Arthur explained that the center offered a variety of programs: tutoring, art classes, sports, career counseling, all free of charge to kids who couldn't afford such opportunities elsewhere. As they passed one of the classrooms, Lucas noticed a group of students learning to code. His eyes lingered on them, fascinated by the intricate lines of code displayed on their screens. Arthur noticed his interest and smiled. "Ever tried coding, Lucas?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Lucas shook his head. "No, but it looks really cool. I've always wondered how computers work, but I never thought I'd have the chance to learn something like that." Arthur patted his shoulder. "Well, you're always welcome here, Lucas. This center is as much yours as it is mine. If you're interested, I can set you up with one of our mentors here to get you started." Lucas's heart swelled with gratitude. The idea of learning something new, something he'd never imagined he could access, felt like a dream. "Thank you, Arthur. I don't even know what to say." Arthur smiled warmly. "You don't have to say anything, Lucas. Just remember that you're capable of great things. I see potential in you, more than you might see in yourself right now. And I want to make sure you have every opportunity to reach it." After the tour, they headed to the center's cafeteria, where Arthur treated Lucas to a lunch that was leagues above what he was used to. They sat by a large window overlooking the fields outside, and as they ate, Arthur shared stories from his own youth, stories of hardship, resilience, and the mentors who'd guided him along the way. Lucas listened intently, absorbing every word. For the first time, he realized that Arthur's success hadn't come easily. He had faced obstacles, just like Lucas. He had endured sleepless nights, worked grueling hours, and fought to prove himself in a world that had doubted him. "You know, Lucas," Arthur said, his tone turning serious, "people might look at us now and assume that everything came easy. But that's never the case. Real success is built on struggle, on resilience, and on the courage to keep going, even when the world tells you to give up." Lucas nodded, feeling a deep sense of respect for Arthur. "Thank you for bringing me here today. It means a lot." Arthur reached across the table, placing a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "You don't have to thank me. I believe in you, Lucas, and I'm here for you, no matter what." They spent the rest of the day at the center, with Lucas joining a coding workshop and meeting some of the kids his age. He found himself laughing, learning, and for the first time, truly feeling like he belonged. The experience left him feeling inspired, with a renewed sense of purpose. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the fields, Arthur drove Lucas home. The drive was quiet, each of them lost in their thoughts. When they finally pulled up in front of Lucas's house, Arthur turned to him with a gentle smile. "Remember, Lucas, this is just the beginning. You have a bright future ahead of you, and whenever you need guidance, you know where to find me." Lucas nodded, his heart full of gratitude. "I won't forget, Arthur. Thank you for everything." As he stepped out of the car and watched Arthur drive away, Lucas felt a sense of peace he hadn't known before. He looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky, feeling a profound connection to the world around him. This journey wasn't just about scholarships or new schools. It was about discovering who he was, who he could become, and the kind of life he wanted to create. With Arthur's support and the opportunities before him, Lucas knew he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind for Lucas. The world he'd once known, a life of small, repetitive routines, of barely scraping by, of dreams deferred by necessity, was gradually transforming into something he could never have imagined. With Arthur's mentorship, the doors that had once been closed to him were now opening, one by one, revealing new paths he hadn't dared to dream of. He balanced his schoolwork, his responsibilities at home, and his newfound studies at the community center. Arthur had arranged for Lucas to join a coding class, which became the highlight of his week. He spent hours at the center, learning about algorithms, logic, and the endless possibilities of technology. For the first time, Lucas felt the exhilarating pull of curiosity and ambition, a thirst for knowledge that only grew with each passing day. One crisp Saturday morning, as Lucas sat in the community center's bright, modern computer lab, immersed in his latest coding project, Arthur walked in. He moved quietly, careful not to disturb the students. When he reached Lucas, he placed a warm hand on his shoulder, and Lucas looked up with a smile. "Hey, Arthur," he greeted, a hint of pride in his voice. "Check this out. I just finished writing a program that sorts lists of numbers by size. It took a while, but I finally got it right. Arthur's face lit up, visibly impressed. That's fantastic, Lucas. You've made remarkable progress. I knew you'd be a quick learner, but you're really going above and beyond. Lucas looked down, trying to hide his bashful smile. It's all thanks to the teachers here. And, well, thanks to you. Arthur pulled up a chair, sitting beside him. You've put in the work, Lucas. You deserve all the credit, but I did come here for a reason. I wanted to talk to you about something important. A sense of excitement, mixed with a hint of nervousness, filled Lucas. Arthur's serious tone suggested something big was about to happen. He set the computer aside, giving Arthur his full attention. Arthur leaned forward, hands clasped together. You remember how I told you that I believe in paying it forward, right? That I was helped by someone when I was your age, and now I try to do the same for others. Lucas nodded. Arthur had told him about his own journey from a struggling young man to a successful businessman, thanks to the support and encouragement of mentors who saw potential in him. Well, I want you to know that you've proven something to me, Lucas. Not just that you're hardworking, but that you're driven, compassionate, and dedicated. You've got the spark of someone who's meant for great things, and I want to offer you a more personal opportunity. Lucas tilted his head, curiosity piqued. What do you mean? Arthur glanced around the room before meeting Lucas's eyes. How would you feel about spending a summer internship with my company? You'd get to learn about the business world, experience real-life problem solving, and work with professionals who can guide you. It's more than just learning code. It's about understanding how everything connects, how technology, business, and creativity work together. Lucas's eyes widened, his heart pounding. A summer internship with your company? Are you serious? Arthur smiled, nodding. Absolutely. I know it sounds overwhelming, but I believe you're ready for it. And you'll have mentors every step of the way, including me. This isn't just a job, Lucas. It's an experience that could set you on a path toward a future that's entirely within your reach. Lucas's thoughts spun as he tried to process the offer. An internship at a real company, learning from people who were experts in their fields, felt like a dream. He'd never imagined he'd get an opportunity like this. Yet here he was, on the brink of something monumental. But, do you think I'm really ready? Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Arthur placed a reassuring hand on Lucas's shoulder. Lucas, I know you're ready. Remember, success isn't about knowing everything. It's about being willing to learn, to grow, and to take on challenges. And you've shown me that you're capable of all those things. Lucas took a deep breath, a rush of confidence filling him. Then, I'd love to, Arthur. I'd be honored. Arthur's face broke into a proud smile. That's the spirit. I'm excited for you, Lucas. This is just the beginning. And who knows, someday, maybe you'll be the one helping others, passing on what you've learned. They spent the rest of the afternoon discussing the details of the internship, the expectations, and the projects Lucas might get to work on. Arthur explained that he'd be starting with some introductory tasks, but as he gained confidence, he'd have the chance to tackle more complex projects. Lucas listened intently, his heart brimming with enthusiasm. This was everything he'd hoped for and more. When he got home that evening, he immediately told his mom the news. She listened with tears of pride in her eyes, her hands covering her mouth in astonishment. Oh, Lucas, I always knew you were destined for something big. I'm so proud of you. Lucas hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth and strength of her embrace. He knew that none of this would have been possible without her love and sacrifice. She had worked tirelessly, given up so much, to make sure he had a chance at a better life. And now, finally, he was in a position to make that dream a reality. As the summer approached, Lucas prepared himself mentally and emotionally for the new experience. He continued his classes at the community center, honing his coding skills and absorbing as much knowledge as he could. The other kids at the center, who had once regarded him with mild curiosity, now looked up to him as a role model. They saw in him someone who had seized an opportunity, someone who had transformed his life through hard work and determination. The first day of the internship arrived, and Lucas dressed in his best clothes, a simple button-up shirt, and a pair of slacks Arthur had given him as a gift. He took a deep breath as he walked through the doors of Arthur's company, the modern office space bustling with energy and purpose. Everywhere he looked, people were engaged in discussions, working on projects, and moving with a sense of direction that inspired him. Arthur greeted him in the lobby, a warm smile on his face. "Welcome to your first day, Lucas. Are you ready to make an impact?" Lucas grinned, his nerves melting away. "I'm ready, Arthur." Arthur introduced him to the team, a group of professionals from various backgrounds who would be his mentors throughout the summer. They welcomed him with open arms, each eager to share their expertise and support his growth. Over the next few weeks, Lucas dived into his work with enthusiasm, learning everything from software development to project management, and even sitting in on strategy meetings where Arthur discussed the company's future. One day, Arthur pulled him aside, handing him a folder. "Lucas, I have a special project for you. It's a small task, but it's one that requires creativity and attention to detail. I want you to design a prototype for an app we're working on. Think of it as a tool for kids who want to learn coding, just like you." Lucas's heart raced as he opened the folder, scanning the project outline. An app for teaching kids coding, something he could relate to deeply, something that could make a real difference in people's lives. He nodded eagerly, already brimming with ideas. For the next week, Lucas poured himself into the project, working late hours and drawing on everything he'd learned. He wanted the app to be user-friendly, engaging, and accessible to kids who didn't have access to fancy computers or private tutors. He thought of his younger self, the boy who had walked down dusty streets, hoping for a better future, and he infused that memory into every line of code, every design choice. Finally, he presented the prototype to Arthur and the team, his hands shaking slightly as he showed them the app's features. He explained his vision, his goals, and the impact he hoped it would have. When he finished, the room erupted in applause, and Arthur gave him a proud, approving nod. "You did fantastic work, Lucas," Arthur said, his voice filled with pride. "This app has the potential to reach kids all over the world. You've created something truly meaningful." In that moment, Lucas felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He had come so far, from pushing a stranger's car on a dusty road to creating a tool that could inspire and educate others. He realized that his journey wasn't just about improving his own life. It was about giving back, about creating opportunities for others to follow in his footsteps. As the summer drew to a close, Arthur took Lucas out to lunch to celebrate his achievements. They sat by a window overlooking the city, the view stretching far into the horizon. "Lucas," Arthur began, his tone reflective, "you've done incredible things this summer. But remember, this is only the beginning. Your story is still unfolding, and the future is yours to shape. Keep learning, keep growing, and never forget where you came from." Lucas nodded, his heart full of gratitude and resolve. He knew that his life had changed in ways he could never have anticipated, and he was ready to embrace the future with open arms. As he left the restaurant and walked down the bustling city streets, Lucas felt a sense of purpose, a strength he hadn't known he possessed. He was no longer just a kid from a struggling neighborhood. He was a young man with dreams, with ambition, and with the power to make a difference. And he knew with unshakable certainty that this was only the beginning.